Hi folks, Tim here again, timsclass.com. Today we're going to cover circular saws. We've got three different ones that we're going to go over. We'll just start with the basic circular saw that most people are familiar with. This is a Makita, that's the brand. It's interesting, most people call them a skill saw because Skill was actually the first one to come out with a circular saw, so everybody still calls them a skill saw. I actually have a skill saw over here. It's a worm drive, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But the technical name for it is a circular saw. So let's just go over the basic parts real quick. We've got the base. One thing I like about this is a magnesium base. It's real lightweight but heavy duty, so it makes for a good base. The saw, you control the depth. Well, this is your blade guard right here, which incidentally, don't lock your blade guards back. I've seen a lot of people will take a shim and stick it here and keep the guard back. I understand why you do that. It seems like it's quicker, but it's very dangerous, so don't do that. Always make sure to leave your guard back. You control the depth. If you look here on the back, you got a little knob right here, a little lever. You pull that up, and this will control the depth of the blade. So whatever material thickness that I'm doing, I generally want to be about a 1/2 inch deeper than the material thickness. What we're getting ready to cut is a 2x12, which is about 1.5 inches. So I'm gonna go ahead and lower this on down to about 2 inches. And that'll give you an idea of where you wanna be. We're gonna lock that back in place. Some neat things about this saw, it actually has a depth gauge right here. Let you see what depth you're cutting at, which I kinda like that. Some other features that this saw has, you can use this saw to cut different angles. If you flip this back, you can take it to a 25 and you set it right here where it'll let you stop at certain places. That takes you to a 45. If I only want to go to a 22.5, I can set it right there. There's just a lot of neat things with this saw that you can do. So once again, I'm not trying to put a plug in for Makita, but they make a really, really good saw. I've used these over the years. I've dropped them off houses and they still run. So just a good little saw. A couple other things to keep in mind when you're using one of these. Obviously they're dangerous. If it'll cut through a piece of wood, it'll cut through a hand very quickly. You've also got a gauge that can go in right here. Let me grab that off the wall. If I'm wanting to cut a certain width, maybe I want to rip a piece off of this, maybe I only want it to go so far, I can put this little gauge in here and set my depth to whatever I want it set to. And you see right here, the distance is going to be between the blade and this guard. So if I wanted to make 1.5 inch rip, I would measure between here and here, lock that gauge down, and I can make that cut just like a table saw. So the cool part about a circular saw, it'll actually replace every saw in my shop if you learn how to use it correctly. These are just more a matter of convenience to be able to do things a lot quicker. But if you don't have the money to buy all these other saws and all you've got is a circular saw, just know that you can do just about anything with this saw. So we're gonna go ahead and use this. I'm gonna show you a couple of cuts, show you how it works, and then we're gonna move on to a battery operated circular saw, and then we're gonna go to a worm drive circular saw. So let's get this plugged up. Come around on this side. You'll notice I've got a 12-inch speed square here, and I put this in place. This is always a good idea to help you get a straight edge. So I'm going to use this as a straight edge when I'm running my circular saw down through there. And we're going to take off about a 1/2 inch. So I'm just going to hold my square right here, and I'm going to run this right down the edge. In the video, but that saw struggled a little going through this 2x12. Okay, it's a 15 amps, got plenty of power, but it's nothing like the worm drive saw, and we'll show you that here in a minute. So this is our circular saw electric. Can't say enough about it. You've got to own one of these tools. Right, our next saw. Same thing, circular saw. Only difference, there's your power. A simple battery. Extremely convenient for out in the field if you want to make a few cuts. If you're trying to work all day on something, this is not the tool. This is just for brief encounters. Let's say you're walking into your job site and maybe you need to do a tub surround and you got to make a few cuts. Then you might want to use this battery operated one. A couple of things, everything operates the same as this, as far as changing out blades, doing all that, and we'll come back to this here shortly and show you how to change out a blade. But one of the key features of this that I really don't like, this button has to be pushed over before it'll start. If I try and pull the trigger, nothing happens. So when you're making this, you have to almost push it over with your finger before you can pull it. And if you'll notice, it's got an automatic brake. So when I let off that trigger, it stops immediately. So it's a good little saw, does great things. Let's run it down this 2x12 and you'll notice a distinct difference. All right, it cut it, but it struggled. That's the downside to a battery operated circular saw. So they've got their uses, they've got their place, but cutting big timber is not one of them. Okay, let's go back to this saw for a minute and talk about changing the blade. We've got it unplugged, which is always your first step. This particular one uses an Allen wrench and they conveniently tuck it in here. So I'm gonna pull that Allen wrench out. Now I've got to get this loose, this nut that's holding the blade on. So if you look up top, you'll see there's a little button here. That actually locks the blade in place. Otherwise, if I don't do that, what's going to happen when I try and loosen that, it's just going to spin. When I hit that lock, it locks. Now I can change the blade. So I'm going to put my Allen wrench in there. And I've got it too tight. Loosen it up, unscrew the bolt. Okay, you're gonna pop it up, little nut sits on top, and you'd swap it out for a new blade. There's nothing wrong with this one, so we're gonna put it back on. You'll also notice that the writing always faces you. Never put it when there's no writing facing you. So the motion of this blade, it's always cutting up in this fashion. It's never cutting down this way. That actually draws the saw into the lumber that you're cutting. So let's put this back. If we can get it back in there. We'll set it down, lock it back. Okay, that's good. We're gonna put our key back and it's ready to go again. All right, the last saw that we're gonna cover in this lesson is a worm drive. And you'll notice some things about this saw compared to the regular circular saw. Number one, much heavier. This saw weighs about 3 pounds more than this saw, okay? Everything about it is much more heavy duty. And I like to try and compare it. This is actually driven by a shaft and not gears. It's kind of like a motorcycle. You've got some motorcycles that have a shaft drive versus some that are driven with a chain. And the big difference is torque, okay? A motorcycle that has a chain on the sprocket will typically go a lot faster than one that has a drive shaft on it. And the same applies to these saws. That saw will actually spin at about 1,000 RPMs faster than this saw. But when it comes to big timber, this saw will eat that saw up because of the low end torque. that torque is what allows it to grind through it. So no matter how big, how strong, how stiff the lumber is, this saw will go through it. And that's why you'll see a lot of times out on job sites, your framers, your guys that have been doing this their whole life, this is the saw they're using. It's called a worm drive. So let's plug it up. Bring it over here. We're going to use the same thing. Pull my cord back out of the way. You'll notice one other thing. Let me bring this to your attention. You'll find that a lot of framers, a lot of people out there are left-handed. This is their saw of choice because it's almost like it's a left-handed saw. You'll notice the cut side is on the opposite side than a typical circular saw. So that's just one other thing to keep in mind. All right, let's go ahead and start this up and listen to the sound difference. Cut through it like butter, okay? That's the difference. So depending on what you're doing, what job you're involved in, use the right tool. That's your lesson today on circular saws. Hope you learned something about it. Thank you.